Shalom from Israel to all of the Daystar viewers around the world. I'm Moshe Bar Tzvi, the producer and founder of Israel Now News. We at Israel Now News are dedicated to bringing you the full story and the truth about Israel from Israel. It's written in the Holy Bible when David said in Psalm 25:5, "Lead me in your truth and teach me, for you are the God of my salvation. For you I wait all the day long." And God says in Zechariah 8:16, "These are the things that you shall do. Speak out the truth to one another. Judge with truth and judgment to peace in your gates. And always search for the truth, and the truth shall set you free." John 8:31. I hope you enjoyed the program. God bless you from Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.
Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rom.
And I'm Erin Viner.
In our top story, the United States has agreed not to intervene in the Syrian civil war. After 3 days of meetings, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov have pinned an accord to avoid U.S. military involvement in Syria. In exchange, President Bashar al-Assad must give an account of his weapons stockpile and ultimately relinquish them to be destroyed. According to the agreement, Syria will be disarmed of chemical weapons by 2014. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a statement saying the understandings between the United States and Russia will be tested with results on the ground, and that being the complete destruction of all the chemical weapons stockpiles used by the Syrian regime against its citizens. Netanyahu added that Assad's test also applies to the international community's efforts to stop Iran's nuclear program. Here, too, action rather than words will be the deciding factor. In any case, Israel must be prepared to defend itself by itself against any threat, and this ability and willingness is more important than ever.
Numerous reports have surfaced claiming that in spite of agreeing to cooperate with the U.S. and Russia, Assad has ordered the relocation of his chemical weapons arsenal. U.S. and Israeli intelligence officials are reporting that an elite unit of the Syrian army has been moving the weapons to clandestine locations throughout the Arab Republic as well as into Iraq. This potential development has left many to believe that Assad agreed to the proposal merely as a means to distract the international community while he intends to hide and protect his weapons of mass destruction. A U.S. intelligence official told the Wall Street Journal that the Syrian regime has 1,000 metric tons of chemical and biological agents that we know of, and there could be more. Both Israel and the United States have admitted that they have difficulty tracking the weapons and that they lack confidence in their knowledge of Assad's overall stockpile, which is believed to be among the most vast in the world.
John Kerry was in the Jewish capital of Jerusalem last week. He met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss the negotiations with the Palestinians. Kerry has been very eager to see progress in the peace process and has been credited for the advancement of talks to this point. Ahead of the meeting, a coalition of 16 members of Knesset wrote a letter appealing to Netanyahu to limit Israel's concessions in the negotiations. In a desperate attempt to avoid the bloodshed that the country experienced after the Oslo Accords, the MKs wrote, "Tell the Secretary of State that Israel has no intention of returning to the parameters of the Oslo Accords or relinquishing any more of Israel's homeland to the Palestinian Authority."
A newly appointed Israeli politician has sent an open letter to the U.S. Secretary of State, warning him that he is putting Israel in an impossible position. Ayelet Shaked of the Habayit Yehudi, or Jewish Home Party, wrote that Kerry forced Israel into the peace talks during a period of time that the entire Middle East is in chaos, and that by doing so has foolishly placed Israel in an impossible situation. Shaked added that in her view, Israel has been compelled to capitulate to terrorism with the releasing of terrorists who have blood on their hands.
U.S. President Barack Obama has confirmed that he has been corresponding with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. 1 week prior to the admission, the New York Times circulated reports that Obama was engaged in behind-the-scenes contact with the hardline Iranian regime. U.S. officials have confirmed the contact and the possibility of a meeting between Obama and Rouhani at the upcoming UN General Assembly.
The United States Treasury Department has announced that it has eased sanctions on Iran. According to a statement released by the department's Office of Foreign Assets Control, it has approved general licenses to permit private organizations to provide humanitarian support to the Islamic Republic. It also authorized activities related to sports matches and related athletic events, such as the sponsorship of sports players, coaching referrals, and training, in addition to other activities. The agency said that this decision comes as a means to encourage humanitarian and goodwill services between the Iranian and American people.
The leader of al-Qaeda has called for increased individual attacks on America. In a message to Muslims worldwide on September 11th, Ayman al-Zawahiri called on Muslim individuals to commit terrorist attacks in the United States. He said we should bleed America economically by provoking it to continue in its massive expenditure on its security, because the weak point of America is its economy. He went on to say, as we defeated America in the gang warfare in Somalia, Yemen, Iraq, and Afghanistan, so should we follow it with war on its own land. These strikes can be done by one brother or a few brothers. He also stressed that Muslims should seize any opportunity to carry out a large strike in America, even if it takes years of planning and patience. He praised the Boston bombers, saying the Boston incident confirms to the Americans that they are not facing individuals, organizations, or groups, but they are facing an uprising of the Muslim community that rose in jihad to defend its soul, dignity, and capabilities.
Christians in Afghanistan are reportedly in grave danger, according to the Christian Today magazine, which was reporting that a member of the parliament has openly called for the execution of Christians in his country. MP Nazir Ahmed Hanafi told local reporters that the continuing conversion to Christianity by Afghani citizens is an offense to Islamic laws and that the Quran dictates that they must be executed. The spread of Christianity is greatly troubling to Afghanistan's Islamic leaders, reportedly leading the Islamic Council of the country to petition President Hamid Karzai to address the issue. Pope Francis has written an inspiring letter to Christians around the world, praising Jews for keeping their faith and for being the root of Christianity. In a letter published in an Italian newspaper, the pontiff wrote that Jews serve as an example to Christians by preserving the faith of the God of the covenant. He also encouraged Christians to learn Jewish customs and history, saying that to be a good Christian, it is necessary to understand Jewish history and traditions. Francis wrote that since the Second Vatican Council, Catholics have rediscovered that the Jewish people remain the holy root from which Jesus germinated, and concluded his letter by wishing Jews around the world a Happy New Year, while encouraging people of all faiths to engage in dialogue.
Israeli scientists have announced the discovery of a new technology which may end worldwide famine by engineering a superplant that can sustain itself during drought. This development will allow crops in arid climates to survive long periods without rain. The superplants can also thrive on less than 1/3 the amount of water that normal plants require. A spokesperson for the scientists said the technology had already been implemented and that international corporations had expressed interest in that technology.
Jews around the world are celebrating Simchat Torah, a holiday that marks the end of the yearly readings of the Old Testament and celebrates the 5 books of Moses. Jews read a portion of the Torah every Sabbath throughout the year, and the festivities commemorate the occasion that the biblical scrolls are rolled back to the beginning. Celebrations include singing and dancing with the holy books, as well as studying the Bible in marathon midnight sessions. Simchat Torah also marks the conclusion of the holiday season on the Jewish calendar. We here at Israel Now News wish all of our viewers a happy holiday and a great coming year. Chag Sameach and Shana Tova.
More than 1 million Jewish children have been killed by abortion in Israel since 1948. Israel is currently engaged in a demographic war for its very survival as a Jewish state. Imagine what a difference 1 million more Jews would have made for Israel. Friends of Efrat saves the lives of thousands of children every year by providing support to pregnant women in distress. Since 1977, Efrat has saved over 30,000 lives and is recognized as a world leader in preventing abortions. You can play a major role in Israel's survival now by helping us save Israel's unborn children.
And that concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here in yet another beautiful day on our rooftop studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Niamh Ellis, the business correspondent for the Jerusalem Post. Niamh, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
Niamh, our economy here has been a real miracle. All over the world for the last few years, the economy has completely collapsed, yet we keep growing and strengthening. How is this possible?
Well, we have been very lucky. Israel was very smart going into the entire crisis ahead of time. It had a very strong conservative view for how its banking system should be run. So when the rest of the world was hit with all those toxic assets that really collapsed the financial system, Israel wasn't really exposed. We only shrank in our economy for about a quarter, and then we continued growing, and we've been growing ever since in rates that I think most of the Western world would really be envious of.
You know, Stanley Fischer is seen here as a complete all-star when it comes to being the head of the Bank of Israel. What are some of the things that he's done specifically that helped us in the economy over the last few years?
Well, Stanley Fischer is really one of those guys that everybody respects. It's amazing. Everyone from all sides of the opposition, pro, anti, everyone really respects him. And during his tenure here as the Bank of Israel governor, he really professionalized the bank and brought it to levels that were, I think, on par with a lot of other professional institutions around the world. He put in a monetary committee. And in fact, we've already seen the positive effects of that, because since he's left, and we've been waiting for a new governor, it's shown some real stability, whereas that might have not happened in the past because there were these new reforms that he implemented.
One of the criticisms that we've seen here in Israel is the home prices. Home prices have skyrocketed over the last 5 years. Why do you think that's happened?
Well, there are a couple of reasons for it. One of them does have to do with interest rates that have stayed very low and made it an attractive investment. But the truth is, people from all over the world want to have a place in Israel, so you have a lot of people coming and investing from outside. And the problem is, once the prices go pretty high, you don't want to just pop them and sink them again. So the question is how to get them back on par without having a dramatic drop. One of the things that they really have to do is just put more supply on the land to meet the demand, and that's sometimes difficult to do with the bureaucracy. But that's the plan, and the government is really making an effort to put more housing units out there. They're clearing out huge swaths of Tel Aviv. They're moving an airport from the north of Tel Aviv, which is prime real estate, over to Ben Gurion Airport, so that they can build more apartments and have more of that supply on the market.
You know, people say that we live in a beautiful house in a really bad neighborhood. We live in the Middle East. There's danger all the time. Egypt had their, spring. Syria has their civil war. Lebanon, there's always a threat. How are these issues around us affecting our internal economy?
You know, it's actually really amazing to see how resilient Israel has been. In the second Intifada, there was a real hit for the economy because there were things happening in Israel, and it was a very scary and difficult time. However, since then, the resilience of the Israeli economy has really shown through, even through operations with Lebanon and Gaza, where there are rockets coming in. Famously, a company called Iskar up in the north stayed open and didn't miss a beat throughout the entire Second Lebanon War in 2006. It ended up getting bought out by Warren Buffett. And that's the kind of example of the way that the economy has shown resilience even when there are rockets falling. Of course, other things that happen in the neighborhood still affect us. Recently, when it became clear that the U.S. was going to have a military strike on Syria after the chemical weapons use, it had an immediate effect on the shekel's strength and the stock market, but those are minor in comparison to the kinds of effects that used to be.
You know, one of the most exciting things in our economy is the find of natural gas off the coast of Haifa. How will that impact our economy here in Israel?
Well, the natural gas is a boon for Israel. We've always said, we don't have any natural resources except for our brains, and now there are both the brains and the natural resources to boost them. The GDP growth is supposed to go up about an entire percentage point just because of the gas. And that's really going to help Israel in energy independence. It's going to help lower the costs of a lot of the industry here because it can use our own gas instead of getting it from abroad from people that don't really want to give it to us. And especially with Egypt in turmoil, which used to supply a lot of our gas, having our own source of natural gas is going to be very helpful.
We see a lot of companies coming from all over the world and just buying Israeli technologies, buying Israeli companies. Why is this continuing? We just saw actually Google buy Waze for $1 billion. Why are people coming to Israel to invest their money?
The idea of Startup Nation, it's something that's really caught on because there's truth to it. We're an innovation hub. Israelis think different and they are problem solvers. So it really is a place where people innovate and make a lot of technology. So all over the world, people are coming here. This year, I think, has set a record. Our exits, startups that people have bought from abroad and companies have bought from abroad have reached $5 billion already this year. And, the year isn't even through yet. So I think the constant ability to come up with new solutions and tackle problems in a way that, problem solving in the Middle East makes you do is the kind of thing that's helped.
Well, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
I think that you should take a good look at the Israeli economy. This is a great place to keep your eye on for the next big thing in tech and security. There's always innovative things coming out of here, and it's an interesting ride.
Neve, thank you for being on the show, and thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
This is Jerusalem, Israel's capital city. It's an ancient and modern treasure that is beyond belief. There's a little bit of Israel in all of us. Come find the Israel in you.
Up next, Shining Light from Israel.
Welcome to Jerusalem. Today we're going to be taking a tour of the Jewish quarter of the Old City. Right now I'm standing in front of the Broad Wall, which is one of the oldest and most significant finds in the Jewish quarter. The Broad Wall was built in the 8th century BC by King Hezekiah in order to protect Jerusalem from invasion. Archaeologists believe it to be the same wall used in the scriptures Isaiah 22:9-10 and Nehemiah 3:8. The wall was discovered in the 1970s when the Jewish quarter was being rebuilt after it had been destroyed by Jordanian forces. The interesting thing about the Jewish quarter is that very often the ancient and modern live side by side. The main entrance into the Jewish quarter is the Zion Gate, which was built by the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent in the 16th century. During both the 1948 and 1967 wars, the gate was the scene of intense fighting. Holes from artillery and bullets can still be seen today, a solemn reminder of Jerusalem's turbulent past. Inside the Zion Gate, winding through the stone alleys, is a vibrant world where past and present collide. There is no better place to demonstrate this than the Western Wall, which is considered the holiest site in the world for Jews. Sitting on top of Mount Moriah is the site of where the first and second temple once stood before it was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. Millions of people visit the wall every year to pray, and it is tradition for visitors to write a prayer on a piece of paper, placing it in the cracks of the wall. Another religiously significant place in the Jewish quarter is the Horva Synagogue. The name Horva, which means ruin in Hebrew, was given to the synagogue because it had been destroyed twice, once in 1721 and again in 1948. It was considered the most important synagogue in the land of Israel in the late 19th and first half of the 20th century. The Horva was eventually rebuilt and rededicated in 2010 after decades of debate. The Jewish quarter is bustling with life. Crowds of people walk through the ancient alleys or gather in the main plaza to eat from one of the many restaurants. Just off the plaza is the Cardo, an ancient Byzantine road that goes through a section of the Jewish quarter. Behind me is a copy of the Madaba map, which depicts Jerusalem during the time of the Byzantine Empire. You can clearly see the Cardo connecting the north and the south of the city. The Cardo, which means heart in Latin, was the lifeline of the city. During the Byzantine time, hundreds of shops lined the streets, acting as both the commercial and social center of Jerusalem. However, today the ancient columns are the only remnants of the once vibrant street. A painting shows what the Cardo once looked like. Just beyond the painting, a section of the Cardo has been rebuilt, with modern shops offering a wide variety of items: t-shirts, paintings, menorahs, and many other souvenirs. The Jewish quarter of the Old City holds a special place in the hearts of many Israelis. There's so much cultural, historical, and religious significance in such a small area, and to take a walk down these streets is to take a walk through history.
Anywhere else, this would be a vacation by a lake. But this is the Sea of Galilee. The wonders of Israel are beyond belief. There's a little bit of Israel in all of us. Come find the Israel in you.
Please stay tuned for the ICEJ report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
Welcome to the ICJ report. My name is Juha Ketala and I'm the International Director of our ministry. The Lord has called us both to Israel and to the nations. That's why we have our headquarters here in Jerusalem. You can see our building here behind me. And in the nations, we have our national branches. Now we as a ministry, we are like a funnel, like a pipe with a wide opening to channel the support and help from the nations into the lives of the individual citizens in Israel. We have had our physical presence here in Jerusalem since 1980. In our headquarters here in Jerusalem, we have a staff of about 40 people from more than 12 different nations. And from here, we are spreading out to all Israel. And the Lord has enabled us to touch the different layers of the Israeli society. We have been doing it and we are doing it either by our ICEJ aid social assistance programs and projects that are going to the north and south and east and west of Israel, or we are doing the touching of the layers of the Israeli society by our partnerships with many different various institutes here in Israel. Among them, for example, the Knesset Christian Allies Caucus, enabling us to touch the national leadership of Israeli nation, the modern day Israel. Or we have a partnership with the Yad Vashem, the most prestigious, very well-known institute in Israel, the Holocaust Museum and the Educational Center. Now, this is what we are doing in Israel. Now, in the nations then, and this is vitally important, very, very important. In the nations, we are serving the body of Christ. Our message nourishes. It builds trust in the spirit of the believers. When we show from the Bible and from the history how God has been so faithful to the Israelites and the modern day Israelis. The Israelis are back in the modern day state of Israel here in the land. God is forever faithful. So we are serving the local body of Christ with our message. But we are doing more than that. We are raising a global prayer on behalf of Israel in the nations. And we are also raising some other kind of support in the nations. And we do this by reaching out to the national leaders and the decision makers in the countries. We are speaking on behalf of Israel and raising understanding of the Israelis and what kind of situations they have in the land. You need to be part of this. Within the last year alone, we were in more than 30 nations, almost 30 nations, from Israel, from Jerusalem. And this is in addition to what the national branches have been doing in more than 70 nations. We have been establishing new branches within the last year. In November last year, we had a new branch we established in Sierra Leone, then in February in Senegal, and in Niger, and then in May in Slovenia. So we have new branches. We have a vision to reach out to the Muslim countries. The Lord prophesied over us that we will establish 10 new branches in the Muslim countries. China is opening for us. Spanish-speaking world is opening for us. In Africa alone, we have more than 20 nations to go into. You need to get involved. Do something practical. Click the donation button on our website and learn where you can put your monies in to support the ministry. Actions prevail over mere knowledge. Write a check. Pray for us. Remember, we are your embassy here in Jerusalem.
Those who dreamed about the Jewish state, those who wrought the historical miracle and against all odds established a state, those who arrived in the homeland to their new home, those who propelled Israel forward step after step.
I have no doubt that this expanded partnership with our many Christian supporters will greatly strengthen Israel in the years ahead. And I want to thank you all for being part of that historic effort and that historic partnership. May God bless all of Israel's friends throughout the world. May God bless you.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rome.
And I'm Erin Viner, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all your Israel updates.